During this year's Simracing Expo 2024, we had the chance to take a spin in the Generation 2 simulator of the Racing Unleashed Formula simulators, as you can see here. Together with my friend Jesper Pedersen, we have both taken a ride in an Assetto Corsa simulation that is combined with the movement of this full Formula 1 style chassis rig. You got a 6-point racing belt that keeps you in position, that is also doing some movement. And I think I'm just gonna tell you a little bit about this simulator. As I've already mentioned, this is Generation 2. Compared to Generation 1, we find multiple improvements across the entire simulator. Where do we start? First of all, with the steering wheel. For those of you that have seen a video when I have been in Zurich in one of their racing lounges, I have linked the video in the top right corner to you. It is an entire overhaul of this simulator. So starting with the steering wheel, back in the day they had a basic steering wheel, some LED stripes at the top and some LED number plates that were showing you the velocity, the gear, and I think the state of charge of the ERS battery in percent. However, that has now completely changed, as the new wheel is equipped with an LCD screen that is not only showing you the revs, not only showing you the gear selector, but also vital information about how the car is performing, what is the car condition, so ERS battery, charges, your ERS mode that you're in, time delta, tire temperatures, and many other things. However, the biggest improvement of the steering wheel is certainly the gear shifters. Remember, in that Generation 1, the gear shift was really hard to pull, and it really took a lot of effort and a lot of forces to shift up or shift down. At least for me personally, when I was racing back then in the Generation 1 simulators, that was a hard bit to do for me, to get into different gears, and it actually felt a little bit painful on my fingers. Now with the Generation 2, they have magnetic shifters, super easy to operate, still a little bit of resistance, but like really nice to operate, not as much as a pain as the Generation 1 steering wheel has been. Moving on to the pedals in the front end of the simulator, still a hydraulic brake system. The old hydraulic brake system to me was like literally one big giant wall that you were pushing into it. No pedal way, no feeling on the brake pedal as such. It was just a wall that you were pushing your foot against. That is how I felt it back then in the Generation 1. Generation 2 now is very different. It is, I'm not even sure if it is an active pedal, but with all the movement going on, it felt very subtle, it felt very good in fidelity. There was a little bit of pedal way, it was still very strong to be operated, but you could certainly feel that you're now pushing the brake, that the brake is moving, that the brake is doing something with the car, so that is a huge improvement. Additionally, on the throttle, I had the same back in the day with the old V1 pedals. I didn't feel the throttle pedal to be in a good shape, in a good moving range. That for me has improved on the simulator as well. Moving on to the simulator and the chassis itself then, the actuators have been updated and are now coming from a 20 Hz activation, if I remember correctly, to a 200 Hz frequency that they can now deal with, and that has a direct influence on the entire movements, on the feeling inside the car. In the old Generation 1 simulators, it felt like, every movement felt sort of the same. It was hard to distinguish and hard to divide whether you were hitting a bump, whether you were sliding the car, whether you were just going over a bumpy surface or not. And that has improved a lot. We are going around the Barcelona circuit here, and in turn 3, the extremely long right-hander, you really feel the car shaking a little bit. when you are on the edge of the tire's capability in terms of grip. So The entire movement, the entire feeling has an very much high fidelity, gives you very good information as well, whether the car is like stepping out on you in the back. You see the simulator is moving on the rear and around. And those movements are more crisp, they are more giving you more feedback, they are giving you a much better understanding and indication of the movement of the car, what the car is actually doing and how the car is behaving on the road. Coming to the 6-point racing belts, there is a little bit of criticism I think still going on for me, as those belts, like, they compress you into the seat. And I had this in turn 3, like, they are pulling you, they are giving you the feeling that you're going through a left-hand turn, but as the simulator went on shaking, indicating you the grip difference, or that you're on the limit of the grip of the tires, the belts didn't really change their force. So that was pretty static compared to the entire movement of the car or of the simulator. And that is a little bit out of, like, it kills a little bit of the immersion. It's not a big deal, but you have to simply consider it that this belt system feels a bit off compared to the movement of the car. Last but not least, the screens. The screens to me are still, I think, over 60-inch big TV screens. They do have the issue of causing latency 100%. And I've also told the stuff about that issue, and I think that is the biggest issue of the sim. As we know, a motion rig or a moving rig or anything that requires an output from a game that needs to process and then put into movement or put into other feedback on a computer or on an entire ecosystem, obviously requires some milliseconds of processment, of output, of input, and so on. So there will be a little bit of latency per se. However, there is obviously display devices, screens and whatnot that that can be used, but they come with a significant downside of latency. And I think this is where the simulator got the absolute most room for improvement, is different screens. Screens that might still be 100% required in terms of size. That is obviously a concern, because as you can see, the simulator is huge in itself, it is long. If you want to have the nose moving in front of the screens, there is a lot of work to do with that. However, I think they might be better off with a solution where the screens are closer to the cockpit and maybe the chassis is moving underneath the screens to an extent, and then obviously the overall view out of the cockpit would need to be adapted a lot with the field of view. So that is a different topic, but I think that with proper screens that are made for gaming or racing, with a low latency mode, with a really short reaction time, that would be a significant improvement to those simulators. But don't get me wrong, those simulators are insane. The ride that we had was massively enjoyable. I had a blast, despite I was spinning around literally every other corner. However, you've seen Jesper in most of the video now having had a good time in the car. It is just, there is so much more immersion in the system when the screen is 100% or as synchronized as possible with the inputs from the sim. And yeah, I think that is all you need to know about the second generation of Racing Unleashed simulators. They have multiple cafes out in Europe. I think there is a couple of them in around Zurich, one in Spain, I think in Madrid, one in Munich, and they're expanding globally on those cafes or on those lounges. So we're going to see them spread around, further bring out the world of sim racing to the ordinary people, which is like really amazing. It is you can do great events there. So if you know the company looking for a challenge or looking for some company event or team building event, then such a sim racing cafe and such iconic simulators is obviously a very interesting and nice choice for the customers to do. Anyway, that's it from my end. Let me know what you think about all this down in the comments area below. And yeah, thank you so much for watching the video.